today are three young leaders who are active health advocates in our community. Natasha Huey, National Program Senior Associate at Youth Speaks, Leilani Celestan, Hope Collaborative Youth Action Board Member, and Ariana Vargas, Community Action Model Advocate at Youth Leadership Institute. And moderating this panel is Erica Cespedes, Health Equity Program Manager at Youth Leadership Institute. Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? Cool. So as an educator and as someone who spends a lot of time with teenagers, we have to warm up the room. We got to do our icebreaker, right? So why don't you go ahead and look to the right and say good morning, hello. Just say if you haven't met someone at your table, say hi real quick. Look to the right. There we go. Amazing. The person to your left, maybe. Good morning. How are you doing today? Happy Saturday. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for humoring me and welcoming us with some warm energy. We want to make sure these young folks feel really positive and amazing and welcome, yeah? All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question, which is, can each of you explain a little more about your work and respective organizations?
So again, my name is Ariana Vargas. I'm with the Youth Leadership Institute, specifically with the CAM, Community Action Model. What we're doing is actually trying to create a policy that limits the amount of unhealthy advertisements, specifically in low-income communities. We've already helped pass a policy which is actually going to raise the age for tobacco. To purchase it, you're going to actually have to be 21, and that's going to actually starting next year.
Nice. Yeah, give it up for Ariana. Ariana, can you remind folks how old you are?
Oh, I'm 19 years old.
Great. Right, Leilani.
So my name is Leilani Celestan. I work with Hope Collaborative. I'm a Youth Action Board leader. And what Hope's about is we try to bring healthier options into West Oakland and East Oakland. And we bring healthier foods into corner stores. We try to get the lunch menus to be healthier and provide kids a more sustainable lunch to be energetic and get them to eat it. And we have gardens to have healthier produce locally so that people can go get healthier foods like vegetables and fruits. So, and it's led by youth, so we're a bunch of like teenagers, young teens, young people, and we go around Oakland and we try to just make it better for low-income people and people in Oakland in general.
Let's give it up for Leilani. And Leilani, can you remind folks how old you are again?
I'm 16.
Come on, y'all. I can give it up for that. Cool. All right, Natasha.
Hi everyone, my name is Natasha Huey. I'm the National Program Senior Associate at Youth Speaks, and one of our statewide programs at Youth Speaks right now is called the Bigger Picture Campaign. And the Bigger Picture basically is trying to end type 2 diabetes in young people. Recognizes that it's a 100% preventable disease that's largely driven by environmental factors, and so we're trying to shift the conversation from being about changing individual behavior to changing the systems and environments that we live in, and do so through spoken word poetry, working with young people, visiting schools, and creating media as well as art to change that conversation.
So we have a powerhouse panel, and you can give it up for Natasha too. Awesome. So we have a series of questions. At the end, we're going to have time for audience questions, so if you have any, please keep that in mind. Our first question for all panelists is going to be, what do you believe are the most significant institutional and systemic forces that contribute to harmful health outcomes, such as diabetes, in young people of color or young people in low-income communities? You can go ahead and start with that. Yeah.
So I think within the system, like growing up, going to public schools in San Francisco all my life, a lot of times there are like, those healthy food programs in the morning that help feed us, breakfast, lunch, and like a late night snack if you're there for after school. But a lot of times they're not as healthy as you would think. They can really affect our health, and a lot of times in our communities, like specifically in the Baby Hunters Point, I live like right on Silver, which is right there, and there are food deserts, so there's not enough grocery stores to actually get our healthy fruits and vegetables and organic foods, and there's a lot of corner stores, so a lot of times like going after school or going to work or school, then work, then home really late, then doing homework. You only have time to like get like local foods, or if you're commuting from like one side of the city to the other side of the city, it's really hard to carry a lot of groceries as well if you want to get those healthy foods. So I think that's part of like the system and the way it's set up. Like why is it that where a lot of like brown folks, Latinos, African Americans live, there's not enough grocery stores yet. Although it's another part where I would go to my internships in different parts of the city, like near to visit there, and it's like, oh, there's like a lot more grocery stores. So just that's part of the system. But.
So not only do I agree with Ariana, but not only is that a factor, I believe that social media is a big factor because especially for young teens and young adults in general, we're tied around social media. And there's always that false information given to you that you can go and eat all this junk food in McDonald's and still be fit as to what social media perceives you to be. So they're always spitting out that image to you on social media while you're going to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook about this young teen girl and she has the best body, she's fit. But then right after you scroll after that, it's a girl eating hot chips or eating all this junk, and it gives into the mindset that you can still want that body, but you can eat all this junk food. So it's like that deception of information of what you can eat and can't eat, which also ties into what Ariana said, because especially for people as African American or Latino people, we're pushed into low poverty placeholds, so we aren't provided the same opportunity as someone in a higher place, where they have places like Whole Foods right around the corner, or healthy stores, Trader Joe's. We have corner stores on every corner where they sell hot chips and candy and sodas. So it's not that, it's social media put into it, and it's also what Ariana said, the simple system of where people like us are put into.
Yes, to everything. I think y'all covered it. Access, affordability, marketing, money, all the misinformation that's put out into the world. And I guess I'll just add from the direction that we're coming at this problem is one of the big systemic factors is also this redirection of the conversation from this is, diabetes is your problem. If you just made better choices, then you wouldn't be facing this disease, rather than talking about the bigger picture, which is the namesake of the campaign, and talking about all of these environmental factors that y'all have just laid out, and making those changes that are necessary for us to make the choices that we actually that are available to us to be healthier.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are common misperceptions about young people as change agents? How are you individually modeling what it means to be a change agent in the face of this?
As a change agent, I feel like a lot of times, like, when I speak to adults of, like in different areas, like, and tell them what I'm doing, they, like, show respect, but then at the same time, they don't always believe, like, oh, okay, like, you're talking about it, you kind of know, but, like, are you really doing it? And then when I go within my community and I'm talking to other youth and tell them what I'm doing, then they look at me different. So it's like I'm not accepted in either or. It's like, I'm either not good enough or I'm too big. When it's like, I feel like, it's neither or. It's like I can be in spaces talking about these issues and then still break it down in spaces where they don't have access to learn the vocabulary of the specific issue we're talking about, but I'm able to break it down with them and let them know, like, how it affects them, like how eating hot Cheetos every day, like, that's going to affect you long term, your lifespan. And, I don't know if that makes sense.
Thank you. Leilani?
So speaking towards the misception part of the question, I think one big misception, especially for people in school, is lunch. I don't know about y'all, but the school lunch ain't good, so we don't eat it, which is it's a big thing, because when we don't eat the school lunch, we eat snacks. And then it's like, well, you choose to eat snacks all day. And we do, but it's the fact that the lunch isn't good. It's not there to, it doesn't catch our eye as if we want it. so we don't eat it and we go to something that we know is going to taste good, like some chips and some juice, and we just leave the lunch alone. And luckily for me, I found an organization like Hope that betters it, especially with what I'm working with right now, which is the schools team, and we're working towards getting the school lunch system better and healthier and more appealing to people to want to eat it, and all in all just make it healthier for children and teens and people in school.
I think another misperception of youth as change agents is that they don't know enough to be in the room, that their lived experience isn't valued, that it's, for whatever reason, doesn't belong in the real conversations. They're not invited into the room to talk about these changes that are happening. And I think that in the work that we're doing, it involves us positioning young people as leaders, as change agents. The youth poets who go and perform at conferences like this, you'll see a couple of our poets later, and at other nationwide conferences for public health, or they're in rooms with politicians, there are press conferences, and there's an undeniability to their belonging in that moment. The way that they're able to tell these stories and stand in the room as equals, as folks who should be leading the conversation and not following the conversation about them. And so I think that that inclusion is something that's often misperceived. And one example too, just the powers that folks don't maybe realize. There's an example of Gabriel Cortez, who's performing later. He was featured in an Open Truth campaign that was on buses in Muni and on billboards, and he's one of the poets in the campaign, and he's also a teaching artist. So when he would go and teach in schools in San Francisco, all of his young people would be like, I saw your face on this billboard, on this bus, what's that about? And it would start all these different conversations, and so there's all of these different community-led conversations that are left out or not really seen by some of the adult change agents who are leading these conversations, but that young people are in many more spaces and have many more opportunities to shift culture than folks might understand.
This next question is specifically for Ariana and Leilani. How is obesity seen among your family, friends, and community? Is it seen as a problem?
I feel like it's not talked about at all. We know sometimes like, things are unhealthy, that's not good, eat fruits and vegetables, but a lot of times, like we've been talking about, we do eat those snacks, and because we don't eat those school lunches because it's gross, or we'll go to McDonald's and get that dollar menu because it's cheap and it'll fill us up, and then that's dinner. I don't have to worry about anything else. So a lot of times it's not talked about that about obesity. They might be like within I'll say like specifically since I'm Latina, the Latina community or Latino community, your family will be like, oh, estás gorda, like you're fat or whatever. But it's not really talking about you're obese, you're making unhealthy decisions. It's talked about in a different way. And a lot of times I feel like it's because, we're first generations, we don't know like all these new things that are coming up, like all this new research, like why it's unhealthy. So I feel like that's a huge problem, like just not being educated, not going out to these, schools in low-income communities, and during the PTA meetings, talking to the parents or reaching out to the parents with like the letters saying like, hey, like A, B, and C is why this is unhealthy. You should try like alternatives, and these are like alternative, like affordable places where you can get this healthy food. So I feel like that's a huge problem with obesity. It's not talked about because we're not educated about it.
So I agree, obesity isn't talked about, but one main thing that is talked about in a way that I feel people try to get out of obesity is that simply you're not skinny. And people think that telling someone or informing someone that you're not skinny is the same thing as telling someone you're obese, which kind of ties into the fact of what she just said, like, especially in society and as young people, I think probably adults maybe too, we look at people and two things, like when we look at someone we criticize and we say, we don't look at them and say, oh, they're obese, we like help. Especially with young people, we look at them and say, oh, they're obese, don't talk to them, or oh, they're big, don't talk to them, or oh, they're this. And that kind of ties into what she said, like, we don't have information about how to get help. It's like someone walks up to you, especially if you got in school or social media, and like, it's like, oh, you're not fitting into society, so I don't know how to help you. And it's like, we're not provided the information that we actually need in order to better ourselves in the problem that we have, like obesity. And like, when people ask for information, I feel a lot of people as teens, we go to a place like Google or type it into Pinterest or Instagram and like look up how to fix or how to help or how to like accounts on how to provide information, and that's not always the best way because the information might not actually be sustainable to what you need and what people, like young people, think of when we talk about I need help or I'm not fitting into society or simply like how can I better myself.
Okay. This question is also for you too. How do you approach engaging parents on these issues, and have you had success?
I love talking to parents, my family's parents, my parents, any parents, young parents, about, these issues, like breaking it down in a way where they're able to understand it. Like a lot of times, they stop, they didn't finish high school or barely finish high school or they're older and going to college, and I like to really just approach these conversations, during Thanksgiving when I was my entire family getting in an argument, why is it that you're letting your kids, watch these shows or, and then, my uncles will get mad or my kids will get mad, because this generational gap, but bringing up that awareness, trying to plant that seed, to bring awareness of, just try and tell your kids to not eat, McDonald's, Burger King all the time, or try and tell them to limit on the amount they go to the liquor store. I just feel like having conversations, because I have the privilege to go to college, I'm really lucky that I have that, and I want to spread that within my community, so I try to do that as much as I can within the organizations I'm a part of, gaining a lot of knowledge on how to organize with YLI and planning it in different places, like in other organizations I'm a part of, just being able to spread it because I feel like that's what's needed is, to learn all this knowledge, but then not just hold it by myself and just talk about it, when I'm here and this organization and just let it stay there. No, I'll take my classroom, I'll take what I learned at YLI and bring it into my home environment, bring it into my community. If I'm on the bus and I run into a little kid talking to his dad who looks really tired, from a long day's work. It reminds me of my dad when I was younger, and I see him trying to talk oh, today I learned this in science, I learned this in math, and then he just looks tired. He's like, okay, it's a long day's work. I understand why you're not expanding on that conversation, but then I'll be trying to give your father make sure he goes to college, make sure he goes to that science program, even if it's something as little as that, because then it kind of brings that awareness, just to be wow, my son, he can be an engineer or he can be a scientist. He deserves to be in a room like this. So I feel little seeds like that can really go far, and that's how I try to spread that awareness.
So can you repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. How do you approach engaging parents on these issues, and have you had success?
So personally, speaking about my family, it's kind of hard to talk about obesity or healthy eating in general, mostly because my family kind of doesn't care, but it's more about it's a lot to talk about and no one really wants to sit there and listen to all this information that either they relate to or don't relate to or really just don't care about. So it is kind of difficult, but there are people that are able to want to hear about it, specifically older people. I don't know why, but I love talking to my grandparents about what I do and how I try to change things with hope, and it it does help, and it does kind of spread the word because for some strange reason, older people talk to younger people more. So it gets across, and I feel like it's relieving. However, not talking to my parents about it or not being able to have my parents understand about it is quite difficult. But I do try to go out in different ways, kind of like, did you know, or mom, have you heard about? So I feel like just pushing it and trying to like get it out there, trying to get what I do and what I like to do and what I'm working on is kind of like changing the way that my parents might look at it. But specifically, I just like talking to older people about it because they understand and been around longer and just know everything. So.
Thank you so much. So this is specifically for Natasha. How has communicating through a combination of spoken word poetry and traditional education helped you reach youth as well as other groups more effectively?
Thanks. I really buy what you were just saying, Leilani. I think that it's interesting with the bigger picture, and with Youth Speaks, we work with young people all the time, and in Youth Speaks in general, we're really just asking young people to come with whatever stories they need to share, whatever things that they are trying to bring to the table. With the bigger picture, it's interesting because we're really coming with this campaign and saying, how does this connect with you? What do you see in your neighborhoods? And still bringing in the lived experience of young people, but around this particular topic. And so I think that when you were working on a campaign like this, it's important for it to be compelling, for it to move folks, for it to speak to the heart and not just the mind. And I think that's something that spoken word poetry does. I think that's something that art in general does. It's something that moves you emotionally, and we hope moves you to act or to change or to stop or to have an experience that sits with you, that you can remember, that's different than, you know, a flyer or a PowerPoint or the other ways that we might try to communicate information. And I think, Leilani, what you were making me think of right now too is that something that we found with the bigger picture is we also speak most effectively to adults, which is interesting. That we do school assemblies with young folks where we show some of our videos, we have live performance. A lot of young people have stories that inspires them to share. So it does, it's very effective in getting young people to have more conversations, to start talking to each other about this new thing. But as far as like resonant movement, it's we're also trying to speak to teachers. We're also trying to speak to young adult leaders who work with other young people so that they can have longer term sessions and really draw out these conversations and be building new environments, because classrooms are environments, schools are environments, Youth Speaks after school workshops are environments that we can change, and things like we stop giving out candy to students like incentives for things. So it's lots that we can do to speak to adults and also to speak to young people, but I think that particularly that intersection of spoken word and data brings together the necessary components to speak to the heart and to the emotions that actually drive us to change.
Thank you. You're so good, huh? All right. So we have a few more questions for all the panelists. The next question is, so much more of young adult life is on social media, like Leilani was mentioning. How has that shaped the work you do, and what challenges does that present in making healthy choices?
I am not on social media as much as the other youth. But when I am, I actually do post a lot of like different things that are going on within the community. That's the like only things you'll ever see me post really. And that's how I kind of try and get the word out of how to be healthier, you know, like letting them know, like, hey, there's this free community event, you know, where there's going to be like, you know, free food, which is, you know, usually healthy food, you know, free like spaces to do spoken word, which is a healing space, you know, and also get to know other people within your community to, you know, collaborate, build that network to, you know, organize together. So that's how I try to do it through social media. Sometimes there are barriers because I'll see my friends post unhealthy things and then I'm like, dang, I need to view that first, and that's like, come on, you guys, like, let's try and make healthy decisions. So that's how I try to express myself through social media and spread the word, because a lot of times it does get out there, you know, through Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, everything like that, and it's sad, but that's how a lot of times we communicate with each other as youth too, and we see each other more like on our phones than we do in person. So that's how I try to spread the knowledge about being healthy.
So I am on social media a lot, like every day and every night. So I see a lot of things on social media. There are accounts on social media where it's like, eat healthy, and that don't really work because right after it's pictures of food and yeah. But I think social media can be helpful, like she said. I do try to, put words out there that like positivity things. Like a lot of stuff on social media is mostly about hate. Don't know why, but a lot of hate is thrown on social media and just a lot of things, especially in this generation. There's a lot of things that tend to be about, like, for some reason this generation is all about that fit body, the good makeup and abs for boys and all types of stuff, which also, that's all you see on social media, but what also you see is a bunch of food and accounts about food and accounts about fitness and then accounts about food, like hatred about not being skinny. So I feel it really plays with like people's mind, and especially young people's mind, because like she talked about earlier, we're not really educated on what is supposed to be and what isn't supposed to be. So social media, I feel like, is the main role on especially younger generations and even that middle generation that might be a little bit older, like she talked about. And so all in all, I think that social media is kind of like the key thing of why people have this misdeception and why we think the way we do about things such as food or things of like why we shouldn't eat this, why we should, what we should look like, what we shouldn't look like, how we should be. And I feel like until someone like Ariana posts things about how, hey, go to this event, it's about to have free food, healthy food, gonna play some games and stuff like that, is only when it's gonna start to change. And
as far as how social media is changing the way that we do the work that we do for the bigger picture, I think Youth Speaks in general, best practice is to meet young people where they are. And so where young people are right now is many places, but social media being one of them. And so we have to make sure to have a presence on social media, which means that we've been adapting a lot of our films and content to be Instagram videos that we did for September. We did a 30-day like sugar-free September where we're putting out writing prompts each day that are different ways to enter this conversation in a creative way, and we're constantly experimenting with it. I think that when we'll be most successful is when we can actually have a board of young people running our social media and leading those ideas, which is one of our goals in the near future, to be developing that and to actually have young people controlling the content that we have on social media and starting these conversations and bringing up the gaps that Ariana and Leilani are talking about, so that we can try to fill them in ways that are more than just make healthy choices or pictures of food, that we can be more compelling and responsive to what's actually effective. So in short, we're on social media, we're learning how to be better with that.
So this is going to be our last question before we open it for audience questions. The next question is, what is your hope for the future of the movement?
My hope is for there to be more equity within these communities, an equitable opportunity to learn about your health and how to be healthier, and actually providing resources to be healthier, whether it's having more healthy grocery stores within communities that are lacking it and have food deserts, whether it's having there be people coming to these schools of low income and talking to them in a way where students and parents that are first generation or haven't gone to college can understand how to be healthier and how to provide that life for their youth, and for their child, because it's something that happens from generation to generation, and if we don't start it now, then when is it going to start? Like, you know, I'm able to start it, like, you know, within myself, within my family, but, you know, if I didn't, then who would within, you know, my future generations? And that's something that we need to keep into account for other families, you know, that are like ours, that we can resonate with, and hopefully they can have that seed, that everyone can eventually have that seed within their family that's planted, so they can have a healthier life, a longer lifespan, and be in settings like these. And also being able to talk about health and, you know, women's health, men's health, and also starting the conversation within, you know, talking about the health with LGBTQ. You know, that's something that's not talked about a lot with people who are transgender or people who are non-binary. And having those conversations, like looking at their health and the struggles they face, being non-binary, undocumented, Latino, African American, not being accepted, and it's not talked about, and that's another thing that I feel like needs to be talked about and looked at and researched, and have their stories and their seeds be planted and their stories to be heard.
So my hope is that school lunches will be better and make not but school lunches will be better, and for children and teens and people in school just to want to eat them, and to also provide people like Black and African, Black and Latino the option of a grocery store that sells produce, or a corner store that has meats and vegetables, which Hope is actually already doing. So yeah, but also to get away from the mindset of what is supposed to be, of like, especially with youth, like what a girl is supposed to look like if she's healthy, or what a boy is supposed to look like if they're healthy. So yeah.
For us, our hope for the future is to end type 2 diabetes in young people. It is 100% preventable disease. 50 years ago, 1 in 100 folks had type 2 diabetes. Now it's looking like 1 in 10. For folks born after the year 2000, so young people right now, teenagers right now, it's projected that 1 in 3 are supposed to get type 2 diabetes in their lifetime, 1 in 2 for Black and Latino youth, and that's unless we do something about it. It's 100% preventable. There's no reasons that should be a sentence or that should be the case, and it hasn't been in very recent history. And so we want to end type 2 diabetes in young people. If we, our goal is to make our campaign irrelevant. If we end in a year from now, 2 years from now, that's fantastic. We're not trying to be around for the next 20 years. We're not trying to be a permanent institution. So really, that's our goal, and I think it's definitely achievable by changing the conversations in these youth-driven, art-driven ways, and ultimately changing the environments that have set us up for disease.
Incredible. Give a round of applause. So we're going to do questions for about 10 minutes. Are you guys able to share 2 mics? We'll take these. Okay. So raise your hand if you have questions, and we'll come find you. So this is for the entire panel. In each of your organizations, do you find that you receive the same amount of youth and adult support, or do you find that it's more difficult to communicate these issues to any certain population?
For us, really short, it's very easy for us to communicate with adults for some reason around this campaign. Adults love this campaign. Teachers love this campaign. Public health educators love this campaign, which is great, which is why we've also created toolkits and lesson plans as resources to help guide that conversation. We've had a few teachers work with us to create entire units in their health classes to work with their young people around creating art around this, but also starting these conversations and getting more of the knowledge that's required. And I think young people are very responsive too. I think it just can be overwhelming, especially when you're talking about changing environments, and then you go home to your environment that's not changed, and then you're like, okay, well, it's much easier to just continue living than to kind of live with that overwhelming sadness in the moment, I think. And so there's young people who are very active around this and adults who are very active around this. But I think that it requires that action for us to be heard more, requires that culture shift that will precede that policy shift to be heard more by young people who can be more empowered and active around it when it can be a very disempowering situation.
So it's with Hope, it's really easy to talk to the people in this community, mainly because we're all youth and we all have the same goal, so we all are working towards the same thing, and we can share tips and we can share accomplishments that we're working on and that we're going through while on this mission.
For YLI, we've actually done a lot of surveys to try and collect our data and present it, because we are working with the public health department. Going into the mission district, it was actually really interesting because a lot of times we try and catch, Spanish-speaking folks, translate the survey for them and ask them questions. And a lot of times, they didn't see the impact that unhealthy advertisements actually have. But again, it's because we're not educated on how media subconsciously affects us, subliminal messages, how it affects us and our choices that we do every day going into, the corner stores. And then also asking the people that live within the mission district now, with the gentrification that has happened, also affected some of our data that we did collect, rather than going into areas that still are the same, like in the Tenderloin, and asking questions. It was just really interesting to analyze the data and compare how, people who aren't educated on subliminal messages, and also asking people who are new to the neighborhood and not fully understanding how there are many liquor stores within the community they're not living in.
For those working on this issue and thinking about social media, what strategies should we be thinking about in terms of crafting effective social media strategies and messaging strategies? What really stands out to young people? What sort of messaging really stands out to young people that can help promote changes in behavior?
So I feel like in social media that reaching out to youth, maybe having it be more interactive, where it's not just certain in social media, pretty much providing resources that are easy to understand, showing breaking down the earlier presentation, it was really interesting, it was amazing. But breaking it down for youth that are still in high school, and to have that preventative action, so that it's not like they're in their 20s, 30s, realizing that they have diabetes, or that they have obesity, and because they haven't gone to a clinic in so long, because they don't have services to that. So being able to break down an easier way for students in high school and even middle school and elementary school for their parents, so that they can understand it in a way that's comprehensible for them. We need to empathize that a lot of these people that we want to reach out to and prevent them from being obese, they like I've been saying, they don't have full high school education. So we need to kind of put ourselves in their shoes and put yourself, in high school, how would have I understood how to have a healthier life, so that I can reach out to them and have them have a healthier life as well.
So I agree, and speaking to social media, I think the main way is to post positivity things, because not only does that make people feel better, but it kind of makes them feel good about themselves. But not only with that, to post information if you have it about how to help, even if it makes you seem silly or it's kind of like random, just like a did you know, or like on Twitter just a link or something, so that people are actually provided the information that they don't usually get on social media, or they don't usually get by just asking someone that they think might know about it.
I think those are your best answers right there. I think positivity is also something that we found is very effective. Like instead of being like, this is what needs to change, or this is like, we're experimenting right now with channeling different emotions. So in the campaign I'm working on, we hit hard on angry, we hit hard on sad, and we're trying to do more humor, more happiness, more joy. And I think that that can be much more activating emotion that people want to share more, that people want to engage with more. And so we're really exploring like more humor, more joy, more like highlighting your health hustle and what you can do to actually be solution-minded and driven, as well as being motivated and kind of angry at this system that's making it look like everything is your fault. And we've learned from the Truth Campaign against tobacco to also know that that's really what is most motivating to people in general, as well as young people, is having kind of this thing to fight against and realizing that it's not a problem within, but it's a problem without, and how do we change that problem without to change the within. And those are really kinds of the emotions that we're trying to channel in social media, just adding on to the comments from Ariana and Leilani.
So we have time for one more question. Oh, there you go. You got your hand up.
Thank you so much, Adriana and Leilani, and Natasha. My question for the two youth is, what inspired you to join the current organizations that you're working with, and how did you get involved?
So, growing up in San Francisco all my life, I've just always been a part of the nonprofit world. You know, that's always been my family. You know, starting off as a poquito loco, and then you know, growing up to eventually be the first generation of the youth apprentice there, and then from there collaborating with other organizations like Bullet, and you know, just being at the same place in the same room, and then meeting someone that's like, hey, do you want to join our org? And it's like, okay, sure. You know, growing up, like it was just something that just happened naturally. I never really thought about it until like I got to college, or I graduated high school, and I realized like, oh, like I guess not everyone does this. This isn't like, you know, a thing that, you know, everyone grows up in. But going into YLI, you know, one of the organizations I'm involved with, you know, it was either Chalk or Metro, probably both, that reached out to me and were like, hey, like, you know, there's this amazing organization, YLI, you know, they're looking for folks, you know, it's in your field. I'm going into health education and Latino studies, and, you know, I just happened to show up and met Erika, and I don't know, the day I met her, she was like, I shouldn't be telling you this right now. I was supposed to wait till, like, you know, the next day to let you know, but you got it, you know, just don't say anything. And then, sorry. But, you know, that's how I got involved, and, you know, it's become, like, all of these organizations have helped me be the person I am today, and they are all my family, and, you know, I've grown such a great family here at YLI, and such support with the youth and the adults.
So what made me join Hope is when I was, I think like last year, my mom was talking to me about this feast event, and my cousin was going, and I only went because my cousin was going, because I didn't want to be there alone, and it like teaches you how to make a healthier food. And last year I was trying out being a vegetarian, but it wasn't for me, but I still went to the event to like try, and it was like no meats there, and I liked it. And the person leading it, Mario, he was talking to me, and he was like, this is what we're about, we're trying to get healthier options, there's all these types of teams, and he was like, come and be a youth leader. And I told him no, but earlier this year I applied, and I went to the interview and everything, and I kind of started liking it as it came along, and I really enjoy it now. And I think it's a good thing to be a part of and a good thing to be in if you want to make change, especially in a community that I'm in, like Oakland. So, yeah.
Okay, great. So again, we want to thank Natasha from Youth Speaks. We want to thank Leilani from Hope Collaborative, and we want to thank Ariana from Youth Leadership Institute. Give it up one more time for them. And I also just want to say thank you so much to all the coordinators for actually making a youth-led panel. I think just modeling this is actually really inspiring, and it's the work that we're all dedicated to doing. So please approach any of us. All of our respective organizations want to collaborate. So thank you again for the opportunity and for your support and warmth today. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're about to head into our breakout sessions in 10 minutes. And you should have signed up for those when you registered, but here's where each will be taking place. The Open Truth public health campaigns will take place in the City Lights room. The sugar and fructose research breakout will be taking place in here in this main conference room. The obesity and the special needs community will be taking place in the game room. And the child self-perceptions and obesity will be taking place in the Golden Gate room. So there's signs on all the doors. You have a 10-minute break, and thank you again, you guys. That was amazing.